Have you ever wondered why the people closest to you seem to turn against you the moment you start awakening to your true spiritual nature? Why family members who once supported you suddenly become critical? Why friends who used to understand you now act like you're a stranger? And why colleagues who respected you begin to distance themselves or even sabotage your efforts? If you've experienced this painful phenomenon where everyone seems to turn against you just as you're stepping into your power as a chosen one, then what I'm about to share with you will finally explain why this happens and, more importantly, how to navigate it without losing yourself in the process. This isn't about paranoia or victim mentality. This is about understanding a very real spiritual and psychological phenomenon that every awakening soul must face. The truth is, when you begin to embody your authentic spiritual power, you trigger something in others that forces them to confront their own spiritual stagnation. And most people, instead of using the trigger as an opportunity for growth, choose to attack the mirror that's showing them what they're not willing to see about themselves. I know how isolating and confusing this experience can be. I know what it's like to feel like you're going crazy, wondering if you really have changed so much that you're no longer recognizable to the people who once knew you best. If this resonates with you, you're not alone in this. What you're experiencing is actually one of the most predictable stages of spiritual awakening. And understanding why it happens will transform how you navigate these challenging relationships. By the end of this video, you'll understand the deep psychological and spiritual reasons why people turn against awakening chosen ones. You'll learn how to protect your energy without closing your heart, how to maintain your spiritual growth despite opposition, and most importantly, how to recognize which relationships are worth fighting for and which ones you need to release with love. The phenomenon of everyone turning against the chosen one isn't just a modern spiritual concept. It's been documented throughout history in every culture and spiritual tradition. Every great spiritual teacher, every mystic, every person who dared to live authentically has faced this same challenge. Jesus was rejected by his hometown. Buddha was opposed by his family. Gandhi was criticized by his own people. You're walking in sacred footsteps, even when it feels like you're walking alone. Let me share something deeply personal that happened to me 4 years ago, when I first began to understand why this phenomenon occurs and how devastating it can be if you're not prepared for it. I had been going through what I now recognize as a profound spiritual awakening for about 18 months. I was meditating regularly, studying spiritual texts, working with energy healing, and beginning to access abilities and insights that I had never experienced before. For the first time in my life, I felt like I was becoming who I was truly meant to be. But as I grew more confident in my spiritual path, something strange began happening with the people around me. My family, who had always been supportive of my personal growth, suddenly became critical of what they called my spiritual phase. My closest friends started making jokes about my woo interests and seemed uncomfortable whenever I shared insights that were meaningful to me. Even my romantic partner at the time began to feel threatened by my growth, accusing me of thinking I was better than everyone else. The breaking point came during a family gathering where I had shared something I thought was a beautiful spiritual insight about finding peace in difficult times. Instead of the warm reception I expected, I was met with eye rolls, dismissive comments, and what felt like a coordinated effort to shut me down. My own sister said, "You used to be so down to earth and relatable. Now you talk like you think you're some kind of guru." That night, I went home feeling completely devastated. I started questioning everything about my spiritual journey. Was I really becoming arrogant? Had I changed so much that I was no longer the person my loved ones had cared about? Was my spiritual awakening just an elaborate form of self-deception that was driving everyone away. But then something profound happened. As I sat in meditation that evening, feeling more alone than I had ever felt in my life, I received what I can only describe as a download of understanding. I suddenly saw the situation from a completely different perspective, and I realized that what was happening wasn't really about me at all. It was about what my growth was triggering in others. You see, when you begin to awaken spiritually, when you start to embody your authentic power and live from your truth, you become a living reminder to others of their own unlived potential. Your growth highlights their stagnation. Your courage to change makes their resistance to change more obvious. Your willingness to question everything forces them to confront their own unexamined beliefs and assumptions. And here's the thing, most people are not ready for that level of self-confrontation. Instead of using your growth as inspiration for their own development, they unconsciously choose to attack you in order to avoid looking at themselves. Now, let me explain the deep psychological and spiritual mechanisms behind why everyone turns against the chosen one. Because understanding these dynamics will completely transform how you navigate this challenging phase of your awakening. The first reason people turn against awakening chosen ones is what psychologists call cognitive dissonance. When you begin to live differently, think differently, and embody different values than the people around you, it creates psychological discomfort in them. They have to either change their own beliefs and behaviors to align with what you're demonstrating is possible, or they have to find reasons to dismiss or attack your new way of being. Most people choose the second option because change is scary and requires effort. It's much easier to convince themselves that you've become weird, arrogant, or delusional than to admit that you might be onto something, that they're not ready to explore themselves. This cognitive dissonance shows up in many ways. Family members might say, "You've changed too much," or that you're not the same person anymore. Friends might accuse you of thinking you're better than them, when you're simply living according to different priorities. Colleagues might become competitive or dismissive when you start approaching work from a more conscious, purpose-driven perspective. But here's what most people don't realize. Their discomfort isn't really about you. It's about what your transformation is revealing about their own life choices. Your willingness to grow is highlighting their unwillingness to grow, and that creates shame and defensiveness that gets projected onto you. Stay with me, because what comes next will explain the second major reason why this happens. And it's something that most spiritual teachers never talk about. The second reason people turn against awakening chosen ones is energetic incompatibility. As you raise your vibration through spiritual practice and conscious living, you literally begin operating at a different energetic frequency than people who are not on a similar path. This creates a natural separation that can feel uncomfortable for both parties. Think of it like tuning forks. When you strike a tuning fork, other tuning forks of the same frequency will begin to resonate, while those of different frequencies will remain silent. As your consciousness expands and your energy shifts, you naturally resonate with others who are operating at similar frequencies, while your resonance with those at lower frequencies diminishes. This isn't about judgment or superiority. It's simply about energetic compatibility. You might find that conversations that once felt engaging now feel draining, or superficial activities that once brought you joy now feel empty or meaningless. People who once energized you now leave you feeling depleted. The people in your life sense this shift. Even if they can't articulate what's happening, they feel the growing distance, the lack of resonance, and instead of understanding it as a natural part of growth, they often interpret it as rejection or abandonment. This leads to defensive behaviors, criticism, and attempts to pull you back down to their level I remember talking to Marcus, a member of our community, who described this phenomenon perfectly. He said, "It's like I've been learning a new language, and now when I try to communicate with my old friends, we literally can't understand each other anymore. They think I'm speaking in riddles, and I find their conversations incredibly shallow. Nobody's wrong. We're just operating in different worlds now." Now, here's where it gets even more complex. The third reason people turn against awakening chosen ones is what I call mirror syndrome. Your spiritual growth acts as a mirror, reflecting back to others their own spiritual potential and their resistance to actualizing it. When you start living authentically, speaking your truth, following your intuition, and prioritizing your spiritual development, you become a living example of what's possible. This can be incredibly threatening to people who have convinced themselves that they can't change, that they're stuck in their circumstances, or that spiritual growth is impossible or impractical. Your transformation challenges their limiting beliefs about what's possible for human beings. Your courage to change highlights their fear of change. Your willingness to prioritize inner growth over external validation exposes their addiction to approval and conformity. Instead of being inspired by your example, many people feel judged by it. Even when you're not judging them at all, they project their own self-criticism onto you, imagining that you think less of them for not being on a similar path, when in reality, you're simply focused on your own growth. If you're still watching, you're definitely someone who has experienced this mirror syndrome firsthand. And I want you to understand that this reaction from others is actually confirmation that you're on the right path. The fourth reason is perhaps the most painful to acknowledge. Some people in your life have been unconsciously feeding off your lower vibrational energy, and your spiritual growth threatens their energetic food source. This might sound harsh, but it's important to understand that not all relationships are based on genuine love and mutual support. Some relationships are unconsciously parasitic, where one person draws energy, validation, or a sense of superiority from another person's struggles, insecurities, or spiritual unconsciousness. When you begin to awaken, when you start to embody your power and live from your truth, you're no longer available to play the role of victim, people pleaser, or spiritual unconscious person that some people have become accustomed to. This can trigger intense reactions from those who have been benefiting from your previous state of being. Family members who have always positioned themselves as the wise ones might feel threatened when you start accessing your own wisdom. Friends who have bonded with you over complaining and negativity might feel abandoned when you no longer want to engage in those patterns. Romantic partners who have felt superior to you might become competitive or critical when you start to shine your light. This is one of the most difficult aspects of spiritual awakening to navigate, because it requires you to recognize that some of your closest relationships may have been based on unhealthy dynamics rather than genuine love and support. Now, here's where it gets interesting. The fifth reason people turn against awakening chosen ones is related to what spiritual traditions call spiritual jealousy or dharma envy. Deep down, every soul knows that it came here with a spiritual mission and purpose. But most people have buried this knowing under layers of conditioning, fear, and social programming. When they encounter someone who is actively pursuing their spiritual path and living their purpose, it awakens a painful awareness of their own spiritual neglect. This creates a complex mix of emotions, longing for what you have, shame about what they've abandoned, fear about whether it's too late for them to change, and resentment you for reminding them of their unlived spiritual potential. Instead of using these feelings as motivation for their own growth, many people choose to attack or diminish your spiritual journey in order to avoid confronting their own spiritual stagnation. They might call your spiritual practices selfish or impractical, criticize your focus on personal growth as navel-gazing, or dismiss your spiritual experiences as delusions or escapism. But here's what most people don't realize it. Their criticism of your spiritual path is often a projection of their own inner critic that's been attacking them for not pursuing their own spiritual development. Stay with me, because what I'm about to share will help you understand the sixth reason, which explains why this phenomenon often intensifies, just as you're making the most progress. The sixth reason people turn against awakening chosen ones is what I call initiation resistance. Your spiritual awakening isn't just a personal journey. It's part of a larger collective awakening that's happening on the planet right now. As you step into your role as a chosen one, you're contributing to the shift in consciousness that's challenging old paradigms and systems. The people around you, whether they realize it or not, are being invited to participate in this collective awakening through their relationship with you. Your growth is offering them an opportunity to examine their own beliefs, question their assumptions, and consider new possibilities for their lives. But initiation is always met with resistance, both internally and externally. Just as you likely experienced resistance from your own ego when you first began awakening, the people around you are experiencing collective ego resistance to the changes you represent. This resistance can manifest as criticism, sabotage, attempts to pull you back into old patterns, or even more subtle forms of undermining your confidence and progress. It's not necessarily conscious or malicious. It's often an unconscious attempt to maintain the status quo and avoid the discomfort of change. Understanding this dynamic can help you recognize that the opposition you're facing isn't really personal, even when it feels very personal. You're not just dealing with individual people's reactions to your growth. You're dealing with collective resistance to the evolutionary changes you represent. The seventh reason is what spiritual teachers call frequency separation. As your consciousness expands and your vibration rises, you naturally begin to attract people and experiences that match your new frequency, while simultaneously repelling those that don't. This is actually a protective mechanism built into the spiritual awakening process. As you become more sensitive to energy and more aligned with your authentic self, you need to be surrounded by people and environments that support your continued growth, rather than drain your energy or pull you backward. The people who turn against you during this process are often those whose energy is no longer compatible with your spiritual development. Their criticism, distance, or hostility is actually the universe's way of helping you identify which relationships serve your highest good and which ones need to be released or transformed. This doesn't mean these people are bad or wrong. It simply means that you're on different paths now, and trying to maintain the same level of connection might be harmful to both of you. Now, here's what most people don't understand about navigating this challenging phase of awakening. The goal isn't to convince everyone to accept your spiritual growth or to maintain all your relationships at any cost. The goal is to stay true to your authentic self while responding to others with compassion and wisdom. Fellow chosen ones, I want you to understand something crucial. The fact that people are turning against you as you awaken is actually a sign that you're doing something right. It means you're no longer willing to play small to make others comfortable. It means you're prioritizing your spiritual growth over social approval. It means you're becoming who you truly are, regardless of whether others understand or accept the person. But here's how to navigate this challenging phase with grace and wisdom. First, recognize that their reaction is about them, not about you. When people criticize your spiritual growth, attack your new beliefs, or distance themselves from you, they're revealing their own fears, limitations, and resistance to change. Don't take it personally, even when it feels very personal. Second, maintain your boundaries without closing your heart. You can protect your energy and limit your exposure to negativity without becoming bitter or resentful. Set clear boundaries about what kinds of conversations and interactions you're willing to engage in. But do so with love and understanding rather than anger or judgment. Third, find your tribe. As you release relationships that no longer serve you, actively seek out connections with others who are on a similar spiritual path. Join spiritual communities, attend workshops and retreats, engage with online groups of like-minded individuals. You need support and understanding from people who get what you're going through. Fourth, practice compassion for those who are struggling with your growth. Remember that their resistance comes from fear, not malice. They're afraid of losing you, afraid of being left behind, afraid of confronting their own spiritual potential. Hold space for their fear while maintaining your boundaries. Fifth, trust the process. The relationships that are meant to survive your awakening will adapt and grow stronger. The ones that aren't meant to continue will naturally fall away. Trust that the universe is orchestrating these changes for your highest good, even when it's painful. And finally, remember your mission. You didn't come here to make everyone comfortable with your spiritual growth. You came here to awaken, to serve, to contribute to the collective evolution of consciousness. Sometimes that requires you to stand alone, to be misunderstood, to be criticized by those who aren't ready for the changes you represent. The world needs you to stay true to your path, even when everyone seems to be turning against you. Especially when everyone seems to be turning against you. Your willingness to continue growing despite opposition is what makes you a true chosen one. Your time is coming, fellow chosen one. Actually, your time is here. The opposition you're facing is temporary, but the growth you're achieving is permanent. The relationships you're losing may have been holding you back, and the ones you're gaining will support your continued evolution. You have more power than you realize, even when you feel isolated and misunderstood. You're exactly where you need to be, even when it feels like you're walking alone. And your mission is important, even when others can't see or appreciate what you're doing. Remember this, every great spiritual teacher throughout history has walked this path of being misunderstood and opposed by those around them. You're in sacred company. You're not alone, even when it feels like everyone has turned against you. The people who are meant to be in your life will recognize and celebrate your growth. The ones who turn against you are simply revealing that they were never truly aligned with your highest good. Let them go with love and make space for the relationships and opportunities that are waiting to support your continued awakening. Your spiritual growth is not negotiable. Your authentic self is not up for debate. Your mission as a chosen one is too important to abandon because others don't understand it. Keep growing, keep awakening, keep shining your light. The world needs what you have to offer, even if the people closest to you can't see it yet. Trust the process, trust your path, and trust that everything is unfolding exactly as it should for your highest good and the good of all. Welcome to the sacred loneliness of the awakening soul. It's temporary, it's necessary, and it's leading you exactly where you need to go. Like, subscribe, and hit the bell, because you won't want to miss what's coming next. This isn't just a video. It's a calling for the chosen one is like you.